Today, we're going to talk about a thinker who completely flipped our understanding of power on its head. His name was Antonio Gramsci, and believe it or not, his most brilliant ideas came to him from inside a prison cell. So picture this. The year is 1926. Italy is in the grip of Mussolini's fascist government. And this man, a pretty well-known philosopher and political leader, gets arrested and just thrown in jail. But this wasn't just about locking him up. The state was terrified of his ideas. I mean, the prosecutor at his trial actually said their goal was to stop this brain from functioning for 20 years. Think about that. That's how dangerous they thought his mind was. Well, they failed. Big time. In fact, from behind those bars, this guy would write down ideas so powerful, they still shape how we see the world today. Okay, let's get into it. So first up, we've got to understand who this person was and the massive question he was trying to figure out while locked away. So who was this man? Antonio Gramsci. He was an Italian Marxist philosopher, a journalist, and one of the founders of the Italian Communist Party. And his most famous works, what we now call the prison notebooks, weren't really a book at all. They were a collection of over 30 notebooks, just jam-packed with his thoughts, all smuggled out of his cell over the years. And the thing that just gnawed at him, the riddle he was obsessed with solving in that cell, was this. Why did the communist revolution work in Russia back in 1917, but then fizzle out everywhere else in Western Europe? I mean, all the conditions seemed right. So what was different? What was the missing piece of the puzzle? Answering that question is what led Gramsci to his most famous, his most groundbreaking idea, a concept that explains a much quieter, more subtle kind of power. And that idea is hegemony. Now, this isn't about ruling with an army or with brute force. That's just domination, plain and simple. Hegemony, that's about ruling through consent. It's what happens when the ideas and values of the people in charge become so baked into the culture that everyone just accepts them as normal, as natural, as just common sense, even if those ideas don't actually benefit them. Let's think of it this way. Coercion, that's the iron fist. It's the army, the police, the threat of violence. You know, it's obvious, it's in your face. But hegemony, that's the velvet glove. It works through culture, through the media you consume, the schools you go to, the stories you're told. It works to shape how you see the world, so you willingly agree with the status quo. It persuades you instead of forcing you. Okay, so how does the state actually pull off this velvet glove control? Well, Gramsci's genius was in how he broke down the state to show how these two types of power, the fist and the glove, work together. He said the modern state has two arms. On one side, you've got political society. That's the iron fist we just talked about, the government, the courts, the police. They rule through force. But then on the other side, there's civil society. And these are all the institutions that seem kind of private. Schools, the media, churches, even the family. And their job is to rule through persuasion, to shape our beliefs. Hegemony is at its strongest when both of these arms are working in tandem, pushing the same dominant ideas. And this leads us to a really fascinating idea. If power is held in place by ideas, then the real fight isn't just on the streets. The real fight is on the battlefield of culture and thought. So who are the generals in this war of ideas? Gramsci called them intellectuals, but he didn't just mean academics. He saw two types. First, you have your traditional intellectuals, think professors, priests, writers, who often see themselves as neutral, but usually end up supporting the way things are. But then you have organic intellectuals, and these are the people who pop up from a specific social class or movement to create and spread new ideas. Think of activists, community organizers, maybe even influential online creators who give a voice to a new way of thinking. And this is captured perfectly in his famous quote. What he's really saying is that everybody thinks, everybody has a worldview. We're all intellectuals in that sense, but our society gives the official job of being an intellectual to a special group of people, and their function is often just to maintain the dominant common sense. Okay, so if you want to challenge this whole system of hegemony, how do you do it? This is where Gramsci gets really strategic. He talks about a war of maneuver. That's a direct, all-out attack on the state, like the Russian Revolution. But he argued that only works where civil society, that velvet glove, is really weak. In most Western countries, he said, you have to fight a war of position first. And that's a long, slow trench war fought inside civil society. It's a battle to change culture, to win arguments, to build a new common sense from the ground up. So that brings us to the big question. Why are we still talking about these ideas that were literally scribbled in a fascist prison cell almost 100 years ago? Why do they still matter so much? Well, his impact on political science is just huge. In political theory, he took Marxism beyond just economics and brought culture and ideas into the mix. In comparative politics, his work is still used to explain why stable democracies are so, well, stable. His ideas even form the basis for major theories about global power and international relations. It's everywhere. And his influence just ripples out from there. His whole focus on culture basically gave birth to the entire field of cultural studies. Thinkers like Stuart Hall owe a huge debt to him. His ideas on building consent helped shape modern democratic theory. And his belief that education is always political was a massive influence on critical education theorists like Paulo Freire. Ultimately, what Gramsci gives us is a lens to see power not just in government, but in our everyday lives, in the movies we watch, the news we read, and the things we just accept as normal. I want to leave you with one of his most haunting quotes, one that feels more relevant than ever right now. "The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters." It's a powerful thought, isn't it? It's about those dangerous, uncertain moments in history when one common sense is falling apart, but a new one hasn't yet been built.